All right, Secretary John Kerry launching a blistering attack against Israel to outline the next steps for peace with the Palestinians.
Regrettably, some seem to believe that the U.S. friendship means the U.S. must accept any policy, regardless of our own interests, our own positions, our own words, our own principles, even after urging again and again that the policy must change. And we may not be able to stop them, but we cannot be expected to defend them.
He went on for about 90 minutes, repeating that multiple times. But with 21 days until Donald Trump takes office, how do these parameters impact the new incoming Trump administration? Jillian Turner worked for the National Security Council under both Presidents George W. Bush and Obama, and she joins us now to break it all down. Good morning, Jillian. Now, I think you look at this and say it's probably not black and white. It's a little bit more gray. How does what John Kerry said affect our relationship with Israel going forward?
Well, I think you'll be hard-pressed to find someone this week who feels like it was really the only option. You know, the nuclear option was the only option here. But what worries me, coming from the critics of Secretary Kerry and the Obama administration this week, is it seems that a lot of hardliners on the right are really turning their backs on the two-state solution. And I don't know that's necessarily in America's long-term interest or the Israelis' long-term interest.
The Palestinian president has said his country is ready to resume negotiations with Israel only if the regime stops its settlement building. Mahmoud Abbas in a statement added that Tel Aviv also needed to implement the signed deals on the basis of mutual reciprocity. Abbas said any negotiations should be based on international law and relevant international legality resolutions under a specified time frame. His remarks come after a major speech by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, in which he sharply criticized Israeli settlement building. Palestinians have time and again said settlements are a major obstacle to direct talks between the two sides.
Israeli media say Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had warned New Zealand that sponsoring the UN anti-Israeli settlement resolution would be a declaration of war. Those reports say Netanyahu had also warned New Zealand of consequences if it continued to promote the resolution. But New Zealand's Foreign Minister Murray McCauley has reportedly refused to back down, saying the resolution is consistent with his country's policy. Israel recalled its ambassador to New Zealand after the latter co-sponsored the measure at the UN Security Council. The resolution asks for halting Israeli settlement activity on occupied Palestinian land, which is in violation of international law.
Diplomatic showdown of epic proportions is intensifying by the hour, with President-elect Donald Trump now teaming up with Israel's Prime Minister over the UN resolution that's gotten real ugly real fast. Garrett Tenney is live at our nation's capital with the escalating war of words. Garrett, what's the latest here?
Well, Jillian, good morning to you. And Secretary of State John Kerry kicked off a new round of this fight yesterday in a wide-ranging speech where he defended the U.S. decision not to defend Israel at the United Nations Security Council last week. Kerry went on to say that friends sometimes need to tell each other the truth even when it hurts.
Regrettably, some seem to believe that the U.S. friendship means the U.S. must accept any policy, regardless of our own interests, our own positions, our own words, our own principles, even after urging again and again that the policy must change.
And Kerry's speech set off a new round of rebukes from the Israeli government, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who ripped Kerry's speech as skewed and said it ignored the fact that Palestine is against the very existence of a Jewish state.
People in Iran are holding the nationwide rallies to mark the 7th anniversary of the 2009 mass demonstrations in support of the Islamic establishment. Demonstrators have taken to the streets in different cities to commemorate the day when tranquility was restored following months of political wrangling and unrest in Iran. In the capital Tehran, people gathered at the Imam Khomeini Grand Prayer Grounds to mark the occasion. On December the 30th, 2009, millions of people took to the streets to condemn the turmoil which erupted in the wake of the presidential election.
Officials from Iraq's Interior Ministry has said that security forces have launched a fresh advance against ISIL in several southeastern districts of Mosul. Fighting in the city stalled about a month ago, but authorities say forces are now advancing in the Insitar district. Thousands of federal police redeployed from Mosul's southern outskirts 2 weeks ago are expected to push into a nearby area. Elite Iraqi soldiers have retaken a quarter of Mosul, ISIL's last major stronghold in Iraq, but their advance has been slow and difficult.
An airstrike has disabled the fifth and final bridge linking eastern and western Mosul as Baghdad prepares to resume operations against Daesh terrorists following a short lull. Iraq's Central Command says disabling the bridges is vital to prevent the terrorists from using them to resupply their positions in eastern Mosul. Government forces have made significant gains in eastern Mosul. Foreign Minister Ibrahim al-Jafari has said 40 neighborhoods have been recaptured from Daesh. Baghdad is now preparing to launch the next phase of the offensive. A top general says federal police have linked up with the army and elite troops. The Iraqi forces will open 2 new fronts. Operations had eased briefly for fear of some 1 million civilians who remain in the city.
Today, the rapid response units have secured a road to enable civilian families to flee from the neighborhoods of Intisar and Quds in eastern Mosul. They came here, and most will then be transported to refugee camps. These families are fleeing because Daesh targeted their neighborhoods using mortars and Katyusha rockets.
Daesh terrorists have stepped up indiscriminate attacks on newly liberated areas in Mosul, forcing civilians to flee. According to the International Organization of Migration, nearly 100,000 people have fled the city. Since operations began on October 17th, Iraqi security forces have avoided the use of heavy weapons in urban areas.
Meanwhile, Russia says it will take Poland's decision to buy U.S. cruise missiles into account in its military planning. Russian representative to NATO Alexander Groshko said that Moscow would carefully monitor Poland's plans to buy U.S.-made air-to-surface missiles. A retired Polish vice admiral also warned that the purchase will, quote, lead to conflict and worsen Russia-Poland ties. Polish government, however, said it needed protection from what it called Russian aggression in Eastern Europe, accusing Moscow of illegally annexing Crimea. Crimea rejoined Russia in a referendum in 2014.
About 154 ISIL targets, including a bomb-laden vehicle, were destroyed in the operation called Euphrates Shield. Turkish troops and Free Syrian Army fighters have been battling to recapture Al-Bab from the Islamic State for over a month, with clashes intensifying last week.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan accused the U.S. of supporting ISIS in Syria, saying he had photos and video to prove it. Besides ISIS, he also called out the U.S. support of groups of Kurdish fighters like the YPG. But the problem here is the YPG has been one of the most successful groups in the fight against ISIS. It's complicated though. Turkey considers the YPG a terrorist group, but the West disagrees. Erdogan's claim about ISIS could be a way for him to express his disappointment in President Obama's policies in Syria. One analyst told Al Jazeera, Turkey believes that the Obama administration does not have the capability to hurt Turkey at this point. Erdogan himself has been accused of aiding ISIS in the past. As of Wednesday morning, Turkey hadn't released any of that evidence it claims to have. The U.S. described the accusation as ludicrous.
On Tuesday, South Korean tech company Hankook Moray Technology made a 13-foot, 1.5-ton manned robot called the Method 1 take a step. As reported by The Telegraph, the Method 1 would more accurately be described as a large robot-powered suit with a pilot that sits inside the robot's torso. One of the suit's designers, Vitay Bulgarov, had previously worked as a robot designer for films like Transformers and RoboCop. He says that real-world applications of his team's design could be put to use in the Fukushima disaster area in Japan. Bulgarov went on to say that the tests are already underway to mount the torso and arms of the suit on a wheeled platform. Hankook Moray hopes to have the $8.3 million robot suit ready for sale by the end of 2017.
A school bus driver asleep at the wheel, nearly crashing as dozens of children on board fear for their lives. Terrified students in Connecticut taking these photos of Paul Pixley dozing off. The kids quickly making frantic phone calls and sending their parents desperate text messages. One reading, "Hurry up, I'm really scared." Pixley admitted to police he took methadone and NyQuil. Unbelievable. He's now banned from driving for the district, thankfully, and facing multiple charges.
Meanwhile, Russia says it will take Poland's decision to buy U.S. cruise missiles into account in its military planning. Russian representative to NATO, Alexander Groshko, said that Moscow would carefully monitor Poland's plans to buy U.S.-made air-to-surface missiles. A retired Polish vice admiral also warned that the purchase will, quote, lead to conflict and worsen Russia-Poland ties. Polish government, however, said it needed protection from what it called Russian aggression in Eastern Europe, accusing Moscow of illegally annexing Crimea. Crimea rejoined Russia in a referendum in 2014.
According to authorities on Wednesday, security for the 128th annual Rose Parade has been tightened, with precautions being taken like sturdier barricades and more checkpoints to monitor and control cars. They said that numerous other measures are also being taken, including some which they will not disclose to the public. Pasadena Police Chief Philip Sanchez told reporters at City Hall that more than 1,000 police officers and dozens of bomb-sniffing dogs are scheduled to work the 5.5-mile parade route. Sanchez said there are no known security threats to the city of Pasadena, to the parade, or to the football game. Nevertheless, we will ensure that aggressive measures are in place to do the best we can to mitigate concerns.
The Obama administration plans to announce a series of retaliatory measures against Russia over alleged political hacks. The new measures could include economic sanctions, leaking information to embarrass Russian officials, and restrictions on Russian diplomats in the U.S. The U.S. intelligence community agreed Moscow was behind hacks into Democratic Party's institutions and sought to help Republican Donald Trump defeat Hillary Clinton. Trump has rejected claims of Russian interference, and the Kremlin has vowed to retaliate in the event of new economic sanctions.
Bismarck, North Dakota is on track to beat a snowfall record. The Bismarck Tribune reports that as of Tuesday, the city had seen 43.5 inches of snow and trailed its year-to-date record by only 2.3 inches. Rick Krolak is spokesman for the National Weather Service's Bismarck office. According to CBS News, he said it's getting close. It's going to be an above-normal season either way. The average seasonal total is 51.2 inches of snow. Krolak added that temperatures in the Plain City are also expected to drop further.
Cows burp and fart. A lot. And it's impacting climate change. Each of Earth's 1.6 billion cows releases about 100 kilograms of methane every year. This might not sound like much, but methane's effect on the climate is 23 times more than carbon dioxide. Methane traps in the heat of the sun and makes the whole planet warmer. So each cow's emissions are about the same as burning 1,000 liters of petrol every year. Cows are mostly responsible for 18% of the total greenhouse gases worldwide. That's more than the entire transportation sector put together. There's good news though. Methane only lasts for about 10 years in the atmosphere, unlike CO2, which can stick around for hundreds of years. So if we can find a way to get cows to produce less methane, then we would see a faster drop in global greenhouse gases. So should we eliminate the bovine prep? Not so fast. A Canadian farmer may have found the key. Joe Dorgan started feeding his cows seaweed as a way of cutting costs on his farm. He teamed up with a local researcher and found that his cows produced 20% less methane on the seaweed diet. Together, they tried other types of seaweed and found that a certain red seaweed called Asparagopsis taxiformis reduced the methane to nearly zero. This is a huge win in the battle against climate change. And if farmers start feeding their cows with a mixture of this seaweed, it would be like taking hundreds of millions of cars off the roads.
Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte threatened to toss corrupt government officials out of a helicopter, saying he's done it before and has no problem doing it again. Duterte made the claim during a speech in the central Philippines on Tuesday. Local media say he hurled a suspected kidnapper from a flying copter back when he was mayor of the southern city of Davao. This is far from the first time Duterte has publicly admitted to killing people.
I killed about 3 of them because there were 3 of them. I didn't really know how many bullets from my gun went inside their bodies.
But Duterte's spokesperson later told reporters this latest claim is, quote, urban legend. And Duterte himself backtracked on his comments during an interview with ABS-CBN on Thursday, saying, "It's not true that I threw people off helicopters. If it were true, I won't admit it." According to several estimates, more than 6,000 people have been killed since Duterte took office in July and vowed to crack down on drug dealers and users.
Well, however, more concerning news on that front. Since the very first case of avian influenza of the season was confirmed last month, authorities have culled nearly, as our Kwon Jung-ho said, 28 million birds. Yes, million in just 43 days. Now, what's even more concerning, the virus has spread to Incheon, which is just 27 kilometers west of Seoul. Birds there have tested positive for H5N6 in the city's first outbreak. Kim Yo-sun has the latest.
The outbreak of avian influenza this season has resulted in a record number of poultry culled in Korea. Quarantine officials said Thursday that the number of poultry animals put to death since the outbreak began in mid-November stands at 28 million nationwide. This figure takes into account the 780,000 quails slaughtered earlier in the day, following a report of a possible outbreak at a poultry farm in Eumseong-gun County, Chungcheongbuk-do Province. The Regional Avian Influenza Monitoring Center had announced that 300 of the quails had died suddenly at the farm and had tested positive for the deadly virus, adding that a more thorough inspection at the farm will follow in the next couple of days. Meanwhile, Incheon has confirmed its first bird flu case ever. The birds at a small chicken farm in the area tested positive on Thursday for the highly pathogenic H5N6 strain of the virus. As a result, all 20 of the farm's chickens, a special breed native to Korea, have been slaughtered. As a preventive measure, the Incheon city government has also decided to cull over 400 poultry animals at 17 other farms located within 3 kilometers of the farm. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
In an attempt to prevent pacemaker hacking, the FDA is advising pacemaker manufacturers to develop processes to detect possible vulnerabilities within their devices and develop a plan to release firmware updates to patch such weaknesses before a patient is harmed. In a blog post Tuesday on the FDA's website, Suzanne Schwartz, Associate Director for Science and Strategic Partnerships, wrote, "We see significant technological advances in patient care and at the same time an increase in the risk of cybersecurity breaches that could affect the device's performance and functionality. The FDA promises to advise manufacturers on cybersecurity issues moving forward."
Well, there are reports that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un carried out hundreds of executions of his officials since taking power in late 2011. Dozens of civilians have also been put to death in public this year alone. Now, all this while pouring in hundreds of millions of dollars into nuclear missile tests this year. Our Connie Kim shares with us a new report by the South's top intelligence think tank.
Newly released figures show North Korea has executed or purged 340 officials and citizens over the past 5 years as a means to solidify leader Kim Jong-un's power base. The Institute for National Security Strategy, a think tank run by South Korea's National Intelligence Service, says executions of officials have steadily increased since 2012, with some 140 high-ranking officials being purged or executed this year alone. Among the most high-profile cases in recent years are Kim Jong-un's uncle Chang Song-taek, who was executed in 2013 on charges of corruption and plotting to overthrow the government, and Defense Minister Hyun Young-chol, who was executed in 2015 for showing disloyalty to Kim. Public executions of North Korean citizens are also becoming more common. The institute says more than 60 cases were recorded as of August this year, double the annual average since Kim came to power in late 2011. The institute also said $300 million was funneled into conducting 2 nuclear tests and more than 20 ballistic missile launches this year. Over the past 5 years, an estimated $180 million has been poured into erecting more than 450 statues of the Kim family, a key part of idolizing the dynasty. In regards to North Korea's nuclear ambitions in 2017, the think tank forecasts Pyongyang will continue to legitimize its parallel nuclear and economic development.